Prime Minister, thanks for speaking to The Hindu. Just to start with, give us a sense of your conversation with Prime Minister Modi. You both spoke of the word sambandh. It's interesting for Indians to understand that that is actually an Icelandic word.
It is an Icelandic word in its purest form. So it was very endearing to hear him use this word. We've built our prosperity based on international relations. A lot of things we've done well on our own. We are a small country. We are geographically isolated in a lot of ways. And so I don't want to belittle what Icelanders have done on their own. We're a very proud nation. But one of our, many of our biggest feats when it comes to prosperity, driving progress, has been increased international relationships. Throughout the history, it has been maybe with Europe and the US, but we're also looking towards Asia, and India is obviously going to be a big part and is a big part of that.
We see the emergence of the relationship between India and Nordic countries. Do you think it's also driven by the fact that the three big powers right now are seen as breaking the international rule of law?
This relationship between the Nordics and India has a longer history than maybe what we've been seeing over the course of the last couple of years. So I don't want to tie it directly to that. But I think as a general, a lot of countries are they're looking outward. Things are shifting. New deals are being done. You see this with the EU as well. You see it with Canada. And you see it now with India, even though I know this is a longer history on that end. So there are opportunities that come out of situations like this. I think the most important thing and the most important message out of this summit is, there's hope for international relations. There are still large democratic countries like India that are opening up instead of closing off, and this is what the world needs to hear.
Even so, there's a basic difference between Nordic countries and India, and that is over ties with Russia. At one point, India is the permanent observer at the Arctic Council, which doesn't seem to be able to work right now because of the differences within. How do you see India's role really when it comes to Nordic countries, as well as its very, very strong relationship with Russia?
Yeah, I won't deny it. They have a different relationship with Russia than the Nordics do. That has a historical chapter as well tied to it. And it's not mine to step directly into that. I do know, however, that Prime Minister Modi wants this war to end, and I think we're all on that ground. The way that we're going at it, it might be a bit different. But I think we also need to be realistic towards the fact that we're standing our ground on Ukraine. We've said Ukraine needs to win this war. For small Nordic countries, this is important that people respect the rule of law, they respect borders, that we don't set double standards. We had the issue with Greenland come up that has touched on us in very direct ways, and we want to make sure that we don't set precedent on that regard. So Prime Minister Modi knows exactly how we feel about that. That doesn't mean that we can't interact at other levels, but we've sent out clear messages on our stand on Ukraine.
And my final question, when it comes to India and Iceland, these are right now nascent relations when it comes to trade. It's very small, investment, very small. Where do you see the biggest growth areas, and do you plan a visit to India soon?
I would love to go to India. I think that's definitely something that we're looking into. We I think should work with what we already have. We have a great relationship when it comes to renewables. We have a lot more to give on that. There's so many growth potentials for India there with its goal on 500 gigawatts in just a few years when it comes to renewables. So there's a lot of projects that can be driven out of that. I do, however, know that we also have potential in cultural ties. We discussed the film industry, for example. We have had outside film crews coming in and using Icelandic territory as backdrop. I think that would be a very interesting cooperation that we could also have with the Indian film industry. And then also just in general, when it comes to the high-skilled labor. Just this weekend, we had municipality elections in Iceland. I knocked on the door of an Indian couple that had come to work in the pharmaceutical sector in Iceland. So we have these stories of people coming to Iceland with their skills, becoming a part of the community in a very positive way. So there's also development opportunities there.
But on that issue, it does seem when we speak to the Indian community that their worry is that they are no longer welcome the way they used to be, as immigration becomes a bigger issue. What do you think is the future when it comes to migration? Because Nordic countries, like European countries, still need a lot of labor.
I understand that. I think there's been a big shift in attitudes to migration, especially when it comes to, I mean, I can only speak from my part of the world where we've maybe been pushed into a setting where we're focusing too much on low-skilled, low-value immigration, which is creating a class sort of coordination problem. These are highly egalitarian countries, and I think when we go down that road of movement in class instead of high-skill, productive, high-wage laborers, we get this shift and these confrontations. I don't see that as an issue when it comes to Indian migration. These are usually people coming in with high levels of education, going into productive jobs. So it's also a matter of how you frame it. But this is a responsibility of the government as well. What type of industries are you pushing forward? What type of employment environment are you pushing forward? Not a race to the bottom, but a race to the top, and using the skilled labor to grow further.
Prime Minister, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks.